Welcome to the Continued Spotlight on Education presented by Neosho County Community College. I'm your host, Huntyr Schwegman, and I'd like to thank you for tuning in today as we put a spotlight on the news, upcoming events, and academic programs at NCCC. And in today's episode, we will be highlighting the Sociology Program at NCCC. I'm sitting here with Assistant Professor of Sociology, Dana Northam. Dana, how's it going today?
Pretty good. Just dealing with the winter weather, but it's been a nice day so far.
Yeah, I know the weather has been kind of flipping back and forth between somewhat warm and near cold snap cold, so glad that it's a little bit warmer on the warmer side today. But so just as we dive into this episode, we want to kind of look into the sociology program, like I said, but let's look at you first. How long have you worked at Neosho County? What's your background in your field? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so like you said, my name is Dana Northam. I am assistant professor, so that means I've only been here for 2 years, so this is the end of my third semester. So I'm super excited to be here at NCCC. This is my first job out of grad school, so my first time teaching. I got my master's degree at Ball State University, which is actually where David Letterman went, who is a talk show host, and Jim Davis, who drew owls for Garfield, and Papa John's. They all went to Ball State for some reason. But yeah, so I got my background in sociology at Ball State. I wrote my thesis on opioid addiction and chronic pain management, which is just a topic that I was the most interested in. Yeah, it's pretty fun up in Muncie, Indiana. It's in the middle of nowhere, but not quite as middle of nowhere as Chanute. But I've always wanted to be a professor. I knew actually didn't want to go to college, but then the first time I stepped into a college campus, I was like, oh, wow, this is so great. It's like a Hallmark movie. I decided to go to college, and then the first interactions I had with my professors, I knew instantly. I was like, I want to do what they're doing because, they were all just so nice, and we have this super unique opportunity to mold and help shape students' futures and future careers at such an influential and young age that I just think is really important for students to have strong professors that are willing to go above and beyond to guide them to career paths that are going to be careers rather than just jobs.
I know you mentioned you always wanted to be a professor, but what kind of drew you to the field of sociology specifically?
Yeah, so I started actually as pre-med, and then I took a biology class and very quickly decided that was not my future. And then I was actually an archaeologist for 3 years, and I had a lot of open credits, and my teacher was like, why don't you just try taking some sociology classes? I heard they're easy A classes. And I was like, oh, that sounds fine. So I decided to dual major in anthropology to do archaeology because my goal was to be an archaeologist. And then in sociology as well. I just had a really influential sociology professor, and she really helped shape who I was as a person, and it helped to shape my opinions. I came from a really small town, so I was very sheltered. So it was just fun to be in a class where they were exposing you to things that no one had exposed you to before. Yeah, after that experience with that professor, I was like, yep, this is sociology. I think is going to be a new path. So I applied to 5 graduate schools, all for anthropology and archaeology, except for one, which was my alma mater, Ball State. I applied to their sociology program because the professor really wanted me to, and I got in, and I turned down all the other schools. So even schools like Notre Dame was the school I was looking at, and I got accepted to, and I was like, no, I'll just stay out here in the middle of nowhere at this very small university in Indiana. Sometimes looking back, I think, man, I probably would be more affluent if I went to Notre Dame or Case Western Reserve, some of these bigger universities, but I love where I'm at. And I love what I'm doing, and I love that I'm able to expose my students to the same stuff that I was exposed to.
Looking to take the next step in your education or career? Spring enrollment is now open at Neosho County Community College. Whether you're starting fresh or looking to transfer credits, we've got flexible options designed to fit your busy life. Affordable tuition, flexible class schedules, and over 40 academic programs are just a click away. Classes start January 21st, so visit neosho.edu/apply to secure your spot today. Again, that's neosho.edu/apply. See you this spring at Neosho County Community College. Go show! So you bring up that exposure. How does the program kind of introduce and expose students to sociology here at Neosho County?
Yeah, so the first class students will take is Intro to Sociology, obviously. So Intro to Sociology really covers the 4 main sociological theories So I explain it to them as a puzzle, and I actually make them do a puzzle on the first day of class. And when you start a puzzle, you always start with the border pieces, right? Because then you get to fill in the rest. So for sociology, our 4 main theories are kind of our border, and then we plug in real world issues to kind of fill out the rest. So we take like a theory like conflict theory, which is kind of grounded in Karl Marx's ideas, and then in class conflict. And then we say, okay, so how can we take something that someone wrote hundreds of years ago and apply it to what's going on right now in the real world. We start with those intro classes, we get them used to the theories, and then from there they can move up to social problems, which is just more in-depth looking at it, and then sociology of race, which is specifically just about race. And then I hope to eventually start like sociology of deviance or sociology of hip-hop, so students can apply it to things that they're actually interested in other than these dudes that were born hundreds of years ago. But yep, that's their kind of opening seed.
You mentioned that you bring into the class some of those current, happenings, these modern conflicts and things like that. So how do you teach students to kind of apply those theories to the current day?
Yeah, so sociology, I tell my students, is really more about like a mindset. So I really, at the end of the day, it's less about memorizing and more about developing a way of thinking for my students. So we do a lot of activities. So I do 50% lecture, 50% activities. My students don't expect to come into class every day and have me just lecturing to the whiteboard. We actually like get up and move and do things. For example, one of my activities I like to do is called an implicit bias test. So what that does is basically it tests their bias towards certain things like religion or rich people versus poor people. And one of my favorite ones is to study obesity. So obesity rates in America have gone up from 9% to over 35% in just our generation. So we're obviously struggling with obesity as a society. This is a real world problem that I want students to look at sociologically, because when they test their bias, and most students will prefer thin people to heavier people. Typically people like, the more aesthetically pleasing, thinner individuals. And then so I have them test that, and then they kind of become acknowledged of their bias. And then I bring sociology in and say, how can we use our sociological lens to look at issues of obesity and put our bias to the side? So we take this real world issue of obesity, we put our bias to the side, and we say, what are some things that can make someone obese? And at first students are always like, oh, well, they're lazy, they don't eat right. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. That could be true. That could be true. But also, like, where do they live? Living here in Chanute, we know that we don't have access to healthy foods. Like it's really hard to eat healthy in Chanute because we have 4 pizza places and McDonald's. And then also looking at activity level, do they feel safe? If you wanted to go for a run through your neighborhood, do you feel safe doing that? If you wanted to join a gym, can you afford it? Or do you feel safe going to the gym? Is there women only gyms if you're a female and you feel uncomfortable working out around the opposite sex? So then I kind of get the students to come up with their own examples of reasons that aren't personal, that may be public issues that lead to obesity rates. NCCC, having a lot of international students, offers a great perspective, because one thing my international students always say is Americans love to drive everywhere. So that's another thing about our culture is we're very drive based. We have so many cars here, whereas in other cultures it's much more common to ride public transit or walk or bike, and that can cut down on obesity rates as well. So that's just an example of one thing that we'll talk about in class to study real world issues applying sociological concepts.
Are you looking to learn a new skill or maybe make a career change? Neosho County Community College has you covered with our evening welding classes. Starting January 21st and running through May 18th, join us every Tuesday and Wednesday from 5 to 9:30 p.m. at the Mitchell Career and Technology Center. Whether you're a beginner or looking to advance, we offer both Level 1 and Level 2 courses. So visit neosho.edu/welding to learn more information and to enroll today. After you help students fully, understand the concepts that they're working with, what kind of career paths can they take that into and actually apply those concepts?
Yeah, so this is a common question I get, especially with students who are interested in sociology, but their parents are kind of telling them, no, go towards those science-based majors, which is to each his own, science has its place. I love science. But sociology actually does have a lot of career paths. So a lot of people who study sociology, next time you watch a documentary or something, they show the name and their profession underneath. Look at some of those professions, because a lot of times in those big docuseries and stuff like that, sociologists are constantly being mentioned. Love is Blind or Married at First Sight. a lot of those shows actually hire sociologists to help them. So sociologists are great for jobs that are anything that has to do with the public, because we're really focusing on developing a lens that is focused on how can we address public issues aside from individual issues. HR jobs, government jobs, a lot of people who will work in the government will study sociology as a major or minor. Counseling, victim counseling as well. There's a lot of fields of sociology that focus on like post-traumatic stress disorder. How do we manage it? What are new ways that we can manage it? But research and teaching are the two biggest fields I would say that most sociologists go into. So obviously teaching is outcome for most professions, but in research, sociologists are really trained to apply sociological thoughts and conduct research about them to create a broader understanding of society. Weight Watchers hired a sociologist to study their advertisements and how effective their advertisements are and stuff like that. Like I said, a lot of documentaries will hire sociologists to provide a more rounded experience or rounded thoughts around certain issues. So there's a lot of career fields that students can use sociology for with a little bit of imagination. I always imagined that if I had a backup career, it would be like something in government, but I don't think I really have the heart for that.
Well, I think we've got a pretty good lens about what it looks like to come into the program and what kind of topics that you would learn if you were a sociology student here. But for students that are interested in the field, what do you think are some of the most important qualities for a student who, when they apply, what are you looking for in a student for them to be successful in the program?
So for sociology students to succeed in the field, I think that it takes a good level of creativity, a student who can have good problem solving skills, but then also is just able to focus less on the problem and more on solutions. So a lot of times with sociologists, when we develop that sociological lens, a lot of sociologists can get really pessimistic because we look at these big issues like obesity or like race relations, and it's like there's just no solution. It's like, how are we going to solve it? So I think optimism is actually like a great trait for sociological students to have to succeed in their careers and to succeed in their courses. And then just keeping an open mind to issues, because some of these issues are rather triggering, like talking about things like maybe abortion or religion that students already have opinions of. So making sure they keep their opinions close, right? We don't want to erase anyone's past. I don't want to take anyone's religion from them, but I want them to be able to apply that to their studies. Really just making sure that they're have the ability to use that sociological lens to look at the world in a different way. It's really like putting glasses on and saying like, hey, this is how we're going to see this issue in society. So I would say some of the most important qualities for students to succeed in sociology would definitely be critical thinking skills, keeping an open mind, and remaining optimistic. Because if you want to survive in a field like sociology with a job that pays well, or even, like sociology, psychology, any of these liberal arts degrees, if you want to succeed, it takes a lot of grit. And it takes a lot of willpower for a student to say, like, I'm willing to struggle in order to achieve those goals that I think I deserve and I need.
Well, Dana, that's all the questions I had for you today. I really appreciate you stopping by this morning to tell us a little bit about your field, and you're very passionate about it, and it's always fun to see.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you having me, and hopefully the people of NCCC and Chanute will hear this and the world, and they'll think more positively about sociology and take my class.
For more information on the Sociology Program at Neosho County, visit neosho.edu/sociology. That concludes this week's episode of the Continued Spotlight on Education presented by Neosho County Community College. My name is Huntyr Schwegman, and I'd like to thank you all again for tuning in today. Don't forget to come back next week as we highlight another amazing aspect of Neosho County Community College, and visit neosho.edu for more information and to enroll at NCCC. Go Show!